Hey everybody, this is Andy with Patterson Adjuster Training. In this video, I'm going to talk to Charles Wilson about his adjuster journey. Charles, say hey to everybody.
Hey everybody, Charles Wilson here, Trust Claim Solutions.
Charles was at my roof clinic on Saturday, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But I think Charles has a unique perspective in that he hasn't had an actual deployment as of yet, but that's been very strategic on his part because he's been wanting to make sure he has enough training. That way he's successful in any deployments that he takes from this point forward. And I think he provides a unique perspective as to if you're just starting out, what steps do you need to get from here to there? And so, Charles, why don't you go into your vocational background as far as what you were doing before you decide to jump in this as an adjuster?
So my background is actually in cybersecurity. Been doing it for a little bit over 20 years now, and before that, I was in the military as an Army officer and also enlisted initially.
Nice. The natural question that I have is why go from the military to cybersecurity to being an insurance adjuster? It almost seems like a step down. Those seems like exciting careers.
And they are exciting. They're very exciting. Uh, but cybersecurity, uh, as a cybersecurity expert, as you continue to go up and up in your career, you move away from certain things that you may enjoy because they want to put you in more leadership roles, and that's fine. But some of these leadership roles are no longer uh, really hands-on. You know, the part of the investigation portion, the applying the knowledge that you've actually gained and reporting on what you have found, you start to lose that when you go higher. So now you're doing a lot more business development, or you may do some little bit of coaching, but you're not touching, and that's the part that I actually miss. And so, and as an adjuster, you're doing just that. You're going out, you're investigating, you're touching, you're interacting with others, and you're coming up with solutions, coming up with what you found in your whole reports.
Yeah, the one thing that a lot of people think about as an adjuster, they think this is maybe my second career, and they think they're starting over completely. In some ways that's true, in some ways it's not. I would argue that you're really not starting over because a lot of those careers that you had before, you've developed skills that can transfer so much better to an adjuster than they will other careers like military. You probably did a lot of reports, you did investigations, all of that is transferable to the adjuster field.
Yeah, and that's why I actually want to go in, because it gives me an opportunity to do exactly what I love to do, which is just that, investigating and using the knowledge that I've gained. By doing that, I was like, okay, this would be a great career field for me. What do I need to do? Let's get trained. And that's the very first thing I said. I said, let's get trained and set up a plan, and let's know when you want to go ahead and transition over. And so for myself, that process started a year ago. I sat down, I researched, and I looked at all these other uh, training firms and training companies that are actually doing training adjusters on how to be an adjuster. And I said to myself, okay, let's start there. Let's get that type of training.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I noticed talking to you on Saturday is you do a lot of training and it almost seems like you do an assessment of where you're at and any weaknesses you have, you go and strategically get training to fill those weaknesses. That must come from a military standpoint, which is going to serve you well as an adjuster.
And I think for every adjuster out there, they should be doing that. You should go ahead and do it a self-evaluation. You know, what is it that you're lacking? You know, talk to your managers, ask them, hey, what is it that I'm doing that I may need to improve on? And then figure out how to improve yourself. Don't sit on your laurels and just simply say, hey, I've gone through say adjuster TV, fast track to deployment, or I've gone through a Just University, or I've gone through even your clinic that you did. I'm like, boom, I got the clinic, I got my license, I'm good. No, you're
Right.
not.
Right.
You're not. You need to, because that you need to constantly use, constantly get training. Because if I don't do the training, I'm going to lose the knowledge, and that's going to make me a slower adjuster. And that's when people are not going to want to bring me in. I need to make sure that I am moving efficiently and and quickly with a pointed or direct action, making sure that things are getting done in a timely manner.
Yeah, and one thing, I'll stick with the military theme just because I think it kind of drives home the point in regards to the need for training. I've never been in the military. I commend people who have served our country. I commend police officers that do the job. But the one thing you hear from military personnel and police officers is when they get into things go south, the one thing they always say is their training kicked in. Training is so important, especially in those occupations. And it's the same way as an adjuster. If you don't have that training to fall back on, you're going to have a very short career.
In the army, they always tell you, to train to fight to train. And I'd like to make sure that I'm perfectly trained in that manner, because I don't want to cause a manager to have to sit out there and like, okay, I need to hold his hand. I need to constantly stay on top of him. You know, I like to be in a situation where I go to my manager and say, okay, what is your expectations? Let me understand what that is. And then I go out and I do what needs to be done. I don't I don't need to be a hindrance. And I want to get on the ground and start running and not have be tripping up on, oh, uh, what's the first thing that I need to do? You need to contact the insured. It's the
Right.
first thing you need to do.
Yeah, that's the most important. And we talked about transferable skills, and that's one thing that you won't have any problems with is customer service. The one thing that I wanted to cover too, because I think you could provide a really good perspective, is there's a lot of folks that want to be an adjuster and they have a limited budget or limited resources as far as time to take training. What training would you recommend for somebody just starting out?
If you're going to start off, you need to find a class that actually, well, especially if you're going to be a new adjuster, you need to find a class that's going to teach you how to adjust. That's going to teach you, how to identify wind and hail damage. You need to understand some of the construction pieces. What does, tiles look like? What's the cement, clay, and also shingles, and 3-tab, and you got to know all of that, be able to identify all these pieces. So you want to go to a class that's going to teach you all that. And then on top of that, you're going to have to train to get your license itself. Because for the state that you're a part of, the license requirements, there may be some training, or you may not be in a state that doesn't have a license, so you got to get a designated home state. And so you'll learn a lot more about insurance that may or may not apply, but it's still good information. And so, uh, and then on top of that, try to find training that's going to allow you to go in person to the location where you can actually start to feel and touch some of these things. What does a hail strike look like? What does it feel like? How to identify, actual wind damage versus crazing on a shingle. Those are some key things that you need to be able to understand. And virtually, they'll show you pictures and you'll see it, but until you start touching it and feeling it, it's like, oh, okay, so that's what hail actually feels like. You know, oh, yeah, this is brittle. I might need to do a brittle test. So those key things you need to do and have that tactile uh type of training. So I'll say it's a combination of maybe virtual and physical, or if you're pure physical, do the physical. But you don't need to just go out there and try to take all the training at one time. give yourself some time. I mean, you don't have to do it over 3 months. I mean, I've been training for a little bit over a year.
Well, one of the things that I think I told you on Saturday is all you need is a deployment, and you're going to be a rock star just because you have taken training so serious. Speaking of training, this is kind of a selfish question. What did you think about the roof clinic that I had on Saturday?
I actually think it was outstanding. It gave me an opportunity to, like I stated before, actually having that tactile, that being able to touch, and feel what these type of damages are. But in addition to it, we had multiple adjusters there,
Hmm.
and each adjuster with various levels of experience. You have yours with 25 years, and then we had another gentleman with 3 years, and another young lady that had was similar to me, just started off, and they're still going through their training regimen. And so being able to sit down and bounce some ideas off of each other, and seeing how someone like yourself who has so much experience, how they identify certain things versus the 3 year, and using both of those, that kind of helped. But not only that, the actual house that you had, that you're trying to make it for an adjuster, your so-called adjuster house, you know, it was more than just the roof. When we sitting inside the classroom area, uh, there was other things that you were talking about, being used for a adjuster house, such as being able to identify the different types of potential damage that are internally, and so that also helped. Because if you have a house of yourself own, or
Now, in this video, we've been talking about training. If you're in the need of some great Xactimate training, then I've got you covered. I've got a complete comprehensive level 1 and level 2 course that you can go through. It's self-paced. You can pause, rewind as much as you want. I have all of the sketches on there, so if you get hung up on any of the sketches in the level 1 or level 2 workbook, you can watch how I do the sketch. Now, this training not only teaches you how to use the software, but it also gets you ready should you want to take the level 1 or level 2 certification exam. I think it's actually pretty good training and it's super affordable, so make sure you check that out. Anyway, back to the video.
uh, you might have drywall, but hey, who's patched up a whole section of the wall that needs to be patching? What does the whole everything looks like? And then on top of that, because of the age of the house, it had other types of materials, construction materials that are not normally used today. So you start thinking about, hey, maybe ordinance and law, maybe that's maybe a change to that. So it gets you to start thinking of what is it that as an adjuster that I may need to have to write up if I had to adjust this house. And that becomes another thing that became a key takeaway.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I appreciate you bringing that up because the roof clinic was focused just on roofs in general, but the one thing that they're in the living room, which is the classroom, there's drywall and then there's some beadboard behind the drywall. So you may have a contractor saying, well, you have to replace that beadboard, which is going to be super expensive nowadays. But how do you handle that situation? And some people say, well, it's hidden behind the drywall. I don't even need to address it. Well, you do need to address it, but until you've had that situation, you're not going to know. And so being able to take a peek behind the walls, I think is helpful because everybody can see a finished room. A lot of training is done in a mock house that has finished walls and stuff. But what you need to pay attention to is what kind of finish is it? Is it knockdown? And if it is knockdown, did they get that material on the wall with a machine? Did they put it on there by hand? Is it a heavy hand texture? Is it a light hand texture? Is it a machine knockdown? So there's so many things when it comes to interior that I haven't got the house quite ready to where I need it. And so that's why eventually this is going to be a 3-day course. And a lot of the time is going to be spent on the interior just because there's so much to the interior. Now, talking about roofs, you can take a picture of a spot that looks like hell that's not and send it in and probably get it approved. And you can take a picture of a spot that is hell, send it in and get it approved. The only difference is you need to stick your thumb or your finger into that spot. And when people talk about bruising or fractured mat, you can actually feel the softness. Now, I know that there's roofing salespeople listening to this and thinking, if granules are missing, that's damage. Well, we'll save that argument for another day. But anyway, you actually need to stand on a roof in 95-degree temperature and put your finger in those areas to see if it's damaged. And one of the ladies, because I was worried that it was going to be too hot, it was about 95 degrees, but you and some of the other adjusters had kind of a unique perspective that I didn't think about because I was trying to make it super comfortable for for everybody. And you guys were like, no, it shouldn't be comfortable because it's not going to be 65 degrees when we go out on our roof. It's going to be hot. We're going to be standing in the sun. So we appreciate this being really real. And we'll have to stop the video right there. Next week's video, we'll jump into part 2 of my conversation with Charles. Anyway, guys, I hope that video helps. I will see you in the next video.